So a little bit about me before we kick off. My name is Sonya Barlow. Thank you so much for having me. I absolutely love working with Crimson. They are very, very keen to really engage and to start the conversations, which is amazing. I graduated in 2015 and fell into the world of tech. What that really means is I took the first job that came my way, and worked my way up quite fast from a data and analytics insight lead to a senior tech and digital transformation consultant. However, along the way, I realized that I didn't really have a sense of community, and I didn't know how to have difficult conversations about career and progression and promotion. And so I started a brunch club called LMF Network, also known as Like-Minded Females, if you will have seen it online. And we started having brunches to bring women together to talk about careers and progression and movement. So similar to Keisha mentioning the wine tasting, ours was more avocado and scrambled eggs in the morning. That brunch idea has now transitioned into a global not-for-profit social enterprise. So we work with companies to help understand their talent. We host a global mentorship scheme where people can get involved as mentors and mentees to talk about career acceleration, finding your passion. We've grown to over 30,000 in following over 18 months, worked with over 50 client partners and upskilled over 3,000 people. And everything we do is charitable and voluntary based. At the start of this year, I decided to leave my job and kind of go full-time self-employed, and unfortunately COVID hit. So during COVID I was having a lot of difficult conversations around budgeting and finance and freelancing, and today I run my own consultancy where I provide diversity inclusion based workshops and soft skills based workshops such as this. I also design and deliver strategic consultancy. I started a podcast in May, which is all about how you get to leadership level without really knowing you were going to get there or the challenges that you faced. And quite luckily, I was able to sign a book deal during the summer period of lockdown. And so my book comes out in October 2021. But the point is, throughout all of these different milestones and different areas in my journey, I have had difficult conversations and I'm constantly having them. And so I realized that we aren't really learning enough about how to have them and how to have something which is quite solid and negotiate well and really put ourselves first. And so I'd love to invite you all into this conversation. Please do use the chat function to ask questions. Please do get involved where you feel that you have something to say or share or would like to upskill yourselves and upskill others. And this is meant to be quite interactive. So at the same time, I will be looking at the chat. So any questions that come through, I'll be answering them as we go along. So as we start conversation, fears, failures, and other moments. What holds you back from having the conversation you want? So this is an invitation for everyone to get involved, especially in the chat function. Please do tell me what holds you back. Is it the fear of rejection? Is it not knowing how to start, what to say, why to say something? Is it the idea that you're not good enough, you're not capable enough, you don't really have the knowledge to be having this conversation? What is it that you think holds you back? So someone kindly is, of my opinion, being belittled. Yep, I definitely understand, and that is a real fear that does exist. And so when we have these fears, be it feeling belittled or having imposter syndrome or feeling like we're going to be rejected or just going and stuttering and stumbling over our words, hopefully this workshop and the activities during this workshop are going to be ones that you can take away and you can start really learning from. This is definitely not a one-size-fits-all approach, and that's why the activities are for you to take away and kind of do a bit of homework and to really start the prep work and shifting your mindset. Someone says, I feel like I'm being asked to put the organization first ahead of my own status ambitions, or maybe that's the voice in my head. And again, that's such a valid point as well. When you are having a difficult conversation, is it you're doing it to suit the needs of someone else, or is it because you're doing it to really help to amplify your career? And someone else mentions how to even start the conversation to begin with. And that's so valid, and we're going to go through that. So some difficult conversations that occur include fear of work and freelancing, finances, rent and expenses, friendships and relationships, university and education. During the last 6 months, we've seen the number of divorce rates go up because relationships have had a difficult conversation. We've seen, unfortunately, unemployment rise, especially in the UK, because difficult conversations have occurred within the workplace. But we've also seen staff be furloughed. In contrast, those are working and whom are still working have extra workload. Someone says what's holding me back is being new to the UK, trying to find the network, a way of work, and even down to difference in formatting or CV. Thank you for sharing that. And that's really where the Crimson women can get involved and can support you. This is all about supporting one another and making sure that we are sharing the resources that we need to thrive. So before we kick off, what is a difficult conversation? It's all well and good throwing around the framework and the kind of phrase that's difficult, but what does that really mean? So a difficult conversation is any situation where the needs, the wants, opinions, or perceptions are diverse. The feelings and emotions are running strong of those who are involved. And the reason for that is they have a lot at stake, or they dread the consequences as a conflict. For a productive conversation, you have to tame your emotional brain, says Dr. Albert Einstein. He calls the emotional side of our brain the dinosaur brain. If you use your dinosaur brain, you're playing out a 6 million-year-old program and nothing good is going to happen. The dinosaur brain, so the emotional brain of the other person, is going to feel like they're being attacked. You're going to respond with fighting or running away, screaming or yelling. And this is what he calls the Godzilla means rodent effect. And not much is accomplished. So from this, we can learn that if we want to have a difficult conversation, we want to have a difficult conversation which is in our favor and where we can find success, we have to have a conversation which is logical, which is factual, which takes the emotion out of the picture. We're not going into something saying, I feel like, I think, it's I know, I'm certain, and here's the data points to prove it. So the 7 steps to managing a difficult conversation include establishing a connection, understanding who owns the problem. Is it a me problem or a you problem? And equally, this is really key. Someone says, I feel like I'm asking, or I feel like I'm having the conversation for my business and not for myself. For whose problem is it really? Go with no judgment, and most definitely listen. Ask questions. But ask questions from curiosity rather than the judgment. So at some point, act like you don't actually know what's going on so you can get to the bottom of it. And actively focus on what you're hearing, not what you're saying. Successful conversations go through these 4 steps. And so for the person who mentioned you don't even have to start the difficult conversation, these are the 4 steps that you should be using to negotiate, to have a difficult conversation, to have conversations, be that around work, time, relationships, family, management, promotion, progression. The first is to understand the build-up. So it's really to take note of the things that have happened which make you see a pattern. So a good example being you're in a position where you have worked in senior positions and you're junior, or relatively one step kind of lesser than where you'd like to be, and you've worked in a senior position for the last 6 months and you haven't got a promotion, your salary hasn't increased, and you're constantly being told next month, next month, next month. Reflection, spend time reflecting on why the other person's behaviors bothers you and get clear on what you really want. Does it bother you because you're not being treated fairly? Does it bother you because you're doing extra work and not being rewarded? Does it bother you because you want to showcase that you are the best person for the job, and maybe your newness to the UK is what's holding you back? And what do you really want? What is your goal? Is it the conversation? Is it the promotion? Is it the progression? Is it the opportunity? The conversation, well, you have to go and have it. The dialogue between those who are involved, and you co-create a solution. And remember, you're not going in with your dinosaur brain, you're going in with your logic. You're going in with data, you're going with analytics, you're going in with really the facts and figures that make you you. And then you follow through. So you work together, you hold each other accountable, and you solve the problem together. Which means if you're talking to your manager or your CEO or your shareholders and your stakeholders, you've put a time frame in. You've put regular meetings in. You're working together to hold each other accountable, and you're solving any problems that do exist with a clear outcome. So this is for us to get involved. I want to learn more about you. So because we're going to keep this quite interactive, I'm not going to ask you to go and do this by yourself. I'm going to ask you to put it on the chat. When was the last time you had a difficult conversation? What was it? What would you have discussed and how would you have done it differently? Let me know in the chat. Let our colleagues know in the chat. Let's get involved. Let's support one another, and let's really have this opportunity to learn more about ourselves. So I can see some typing going. For example, just yesterday, I had a difficult conversation with a client who wants me to host a 1-hour session on mental health, how to build community, especially now that we are during kind of COVID lockdown and working remotely, but they didn't have the budget to meet that request. And so the difficult conversation I had was, one, not only negotiating the budget, but two, being able to meet their request whilst holding down a format which is educational and impactful. A constant difficult conversation I'm having at the moment is around my book. One of my purpose and my values is being able to be open and accessible to those, and especially young people who need support, business coaching, CV building, LinkedIn, and careers. But unfortunately, I had to prioritize myself and writing my book. And so I've had to change office hours. And unfortunately, I've had to cancel some catch up, predominantly because a lot of the catch ups we do for free throughout our network. And we host anywhere between 6 to 9 free workshops a month. Right, so someone said, asking for the appropriate title for the job I was already appointed 3 months ago. I wouldn't have gone approached as war ready as I did and learnt the benefit of negotiating with a win-win mindset. And thank you so much for sharing and being honest. And that's what we're going to go through today. Another person's kindly mentioned, a recent conversation I had was a performance conversation with my team. One of the team felt that the team leader was bullying or microaggressive, micromanaging even. The team lead was unaware of how their words, actions were impacting, and it was a challenge because it was based off emotion rather than how the colleague felt. And that's such a key one. When you are in a position of seniority, sometimes your KPIs and the stresses that you have from your managers can often come out in your junior staff members. And it's about taking a step back and leading it with data points and facts and figures rather than emotion. Someone else says, I had feedback on an internal interview for a role that at one point was earmarked for me. I said I was okay with who got appointed as my boss, but I hadn't the time to process. I gave too much too soon. And that's a learning exercise. What can you do in those situations? You can go back, you can drop an email, you can put a one-to-one in and say, look, on reflection, here's how I really feel, and I want to let you know about it. I find most conversations are difficult, either internally or externally. People aren't motivated to work on a project, projects are being delayed. And that's such a cool one, and we'll go into that. But we've got to direct those conversations, one, with the personalities that we're talking to, and two, focused on the KPIs that are being met. Projects need to be productive and profitable and efficient so that you can get your bonuses, you can get paid, and you can be seen in a path where you can be promoted. Working on a multinational project, two of the other PMs were being less honest with the client. You took the route rather to resign than to actually address the issue, and that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, for doing that. But it's not easy. And unfortunately, no one told us it wasn't going to be easy. So on the chat, I'm just going to plug in this really short personality test for those who are involved. By no means do you have to do it right now, but it definitely is something which is super interesting for you to do when you have a moment. It takes no more than 2 minutes, and as personality tests are definitely not Bible, they are just a good way to understand where you are versus who you're speaking to. And this is really important because this goes into personalities. I have a client that I'm currently coaching. He is one step away from being the chief treasury officer he wants to be. But for the last 6 to 8 months, he's had found it really difficult to talk to his boss, to fight for the promotion and the pay rise. Turns out it's because he thought his boss was a yellow. So he's gone in storytelling, painting this bigger picture in a very inspiring and enthusiastic manner. Actually, his boss is a hardcore red, meaning his boss likes results, he's competitive, and he's driven. And so we've been working together for the last 2 months on how to not only start that conversation, but to have the conversation, especially when your personality type doesn't align to the person that you're talking to. So someone who is red wants to know numbers. They want to know what the bigger goal is. They want to know how you're going to help achieve their goal. If we're talking to shareholders and stakeholders or someone who is more senior than us, their goal ultimately comes down to profits and KPIs and business-based terms. So painting them a nice picture of how they're going to feel and look doesn't really work. They want to know, if you are the chief treasury officer, how is that going to help the shareholders? How is that going to impact conversation? So someone asks, how does he know his bosses are red? Well, we've had the conversation. We've spoken internally, myself and him, about, what is his boss like? I've given him scenarios such as, is his boss more engaged when you start talking about figures and start talking about results? Or is his boss more engaged when you start telling him a story about a bigger picture with no real context? Does your boss take time to make an idea? Is he or she or them quite democratic? Or are they more analytical? Are they system orientated? Are they detailed? Do they like the finer things in life? Are they more reserved in their approach? Or are they more outgoing? So just having looked at this spectrum, where do you think you would be? It's very rare that you are the opposites, so you can't really be a blue and a yellow, but you can definitely be the ones on either side. And yes, some people are a little bit of both depending on the situation, but if you think about it, you often find that you are one or the other. So I am a red and a yellow. I've definitely tried to be a blue and a green, but it just hasn't worked for me. But what that means is that some of my weaknesses include not being so detail oriented. One of my strengths is being slightly impulsive and seeing the bigger goal and the figuring out how to do the tasks later. The outgoing side of me, the people-orientated side, wants to please and wants to perfect, but the results-driven wants to get the work done and on time. And I'm competitive. If you tell me I can't do something, I'm probably going to do it just to prove you wrong. But I know that when I'm having conversations with clients about budgets and rates and consultancy, I have to turn my yellow brain a little bit off and turn my blue brain a little bit on. So I have to go in with detail and be more analytical and systematic in the approach. And I know that that's not necessarily a strength of mine. It's something I can do. So it's about allocating a longer time period. It's around preserving those days to get the process in place. So those who are in the chat, where do you think you are? And are you shocked? Or is it where you thought you would be? And then the second question, which you don't have to answer in the chat unless you would like to, is the person that you're having the difficult conversation with, where are they? And were you approaching the conversation in the way that probably suited them and they understood. So how to create a successful conversation from a difficult one. So someone's kindly said, I'm a red and a blue. So if you're a red and a blue, it means that you are orientated, you are cautious at the same time, but maybe you aren't the greatest in your people skills. And so it's likely that that is somewhere you can identify you need training or you need support, or you need to just widen the group that you are with and the demographic that you hold yourself close to, so that you're able to create a sense of empathy and learn from one another. So how do you create a successful conversation from a difficult one, such as I would like a promotion? So we've already spoken about the one on the left. So I'm going to tell you the one on the right. It's a new way. It's a different way. So the first is to go and inquire, cultivate an attitude of discovery and curiosity. Pretend you don't know anything and you really don't, and try to learn as much possible about your opponent, their partner, and the point of view. I would like a promotion, but I haven't been given it. I've been working hard for the last 6 months. I've been trying to apply for jobs with this CV and it's just not working. Acknowledgement. Acknowledgement means showing that you've heard and understood. Try to understand the other person and repeat it back to them. An example being, so just to clarify, this is what I think you're saying. This is what I hear. Is this correct? Advocate. When you sense your partner has expressed all their energy on the topic, it's your turn. What can you see from your perspective that this person has missed? Help clarify, minimizing theirs. So someone kindly said in the beginning that you wanted to not feel like you're undermined. But you also want to make sure that you're not undermining the other person. And then you problem solve. You're ready to begin. Solutions, brainstorming, and continued inquiry are very useful here. Ask your partner what they think may work, whatever they say, find something you like and build on. So that co-creation, that co-collaborative is very important. So I would like a promotion. I've been working really hard for the last 6 months in a more senior position, but I've been in this business for the last 2 years. I don't quite understand why I'm not there. Let the other person speak. Acknowledge. Okay, so from my understanding of what you've just said, I'm not there because I haven't filled these 3 areas of work. I haven't met the criteria, or you think I need some more time. When the other person expressed all their views. Well, from my perspective, given the job description, I think I've excelled in these 5 points and I've definitely met these 3. At the same time, if you were to go outside of the workplace to hire someone, that would take more time and cost more money. I know the business, I know the position, I know the people. Here's the data points to prove it. Here's the successes I've had and the goals I've met. But at the same point, I think it would be great if we could take a step back and understand how we can get there together. And so now you're ready to begin solutions. Your manager may come back with, actually, I don't think you'll be ready for the next 6 months. So you go in with, okay, so over the next 6 months, I would like you to, in black and white, in an email, clarify exactly what I need to do to get there. I would like regular one-to-ones on a monthly basis to prove the work that I've done to deliver. And I'd like a midway check-in as if it was appraisal to see how I'm doing. On the basis that if I'm able to meet what you have asked of me earlier than 6 months, then I will be in a position where I will be promoted. Otherwise, as you know, there will be a loss of involvement, morale, and unfortunately, that could really harm productivity. And work on that together. Before I move on, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to add to this? Anything that doesn't make sense, or any of these points that you think, right, I actually could create a successful conversation from this one? Here's another way of how to negotiate. This is actually an Instagram post that we've posted this week on our socials, because we're starting a money management series. So negotiating when it comes to money, starting from money mindset to budgeting and saving, all the way to credit and friends and investment, is very difficult. And so over the course of October and November, we'll be running an 8-week program to help you. But even you prepare what you would like from the meeting. You actively listen, you ask questions, you make your offer and counter, and then you stay silent. There's a great question. What would you do if the company you work for bases a promotion on time? And there are definitely companies that do that. And please, for those beautiful ladies that work at Crimson, do chime in as well, because obviously you have far more experience when it comes to these conversations. So for example, the person one level higher than me has been there for 10 years. So I appreciate the question. And it's also about being aware of the current climate, industry, and mindset. If it's based on time, but there's a shift in industry, there's a shift in ways of working. Time no longer is the measure versus experience, accessibility, and reward. Maybe your best case in this scenario is to go back and to prepare and to be in a position where you can go on your job descriptions and clearly point out where you have met your goals and examples of successes and KPIs. You listen to the other person, but you counter with, well, actually, the landscape is changing. The average no longer spends 10 years to get there. They spend X amount of years and they're able to deliver.
I guess can I just
of course, please.
I think from my opinion, I might sound a little bit brutal saying this, but I probably put the question back to you: is that kind of an organisation that you want to work for, or is it time for you to maybe look elsewhere? Because if after you've had the conversation of what Sonya said, trying to put your argument to them that things have changed now, and they don't listen, they don't understand, then potentially, if the person that's been one level higher than you, that's been there for 10 years, potentially maybe you do want to look at an organisation that does adapt with the times and can progress you based on what you've done in your achievements, and not just based on the years. So potentially it might be looking at what else is out there and seeing, are you at the right level for your role, and if not, potentially having a look to move on. And that's just being brutally honest.
And we're here for honesty. Thank you so much. That's something I was going to follow up on, is and though I haven't put it here, and Kate just kind of kindly just kind of echoed that point, is sometimes you have to put yourself first. If you are in a culture where you are dealing with time versus experience, and you're dealing with culture versus values, and maybe that's not the place for you. If you're in an environment that's toxic, where you're constantly being put down and told that you're not good enough, you're not ready, but you feel like you are, one of the best ways that you can do is you can genuinely fix your LinkedIn, fix your CV, and start seeing what's available in the ecosystem. Even if it's just to have initial conversations. That's why you can get the Woman of Crimson involved and say, look, this is what I'm feeling and thinking, but here's my experience, here's my accolades. What do you think I should be doing, and where do you think I should be? Because if you're waiting 10 years for your next promotion, unfortunately, in 10 years, the world is going to shift so fast that you've not only lost out on your promotion and your your kind of next accolade, but even from a monetary perspective, you won't be where you need to be. Someone says we don't have promotion model, it's all about roles and grades. Regrading is very rare, usually moving to a new role with a new grade. And so if you are in these businesses that seem to be extremely traditional and very hierarchical, and if that's not where you want to be, consider how you can shift and move your skill set into something new, into a startup, into a small to medium-sized enterprise, a business that's really going to value your contribution and is really going to want to see you thrive. Does anyone else in the chat have any suggestions or any other thoughts on this? You know, this is your time, and appreciate it's the morning, but this is where we can really support one another in having these difficult conversations. And, you know, hopefully one day we can get back out in person to do it. But right now, we just need to be online and build this community where we can have these conversations. And really, more than anything, have the confidence to know when we're not being treated in the way that's fair.
So shall I share my dilemma? Which
yes, please, of course.
It's me that said about that we don't have a promotion model. Now we're more of a public sector ethos. I work for a university, and that is how universities and many public sector organisations work. Is that it's not that you argue that you need to go up a rung. Unfortunately, it's not often how it works. So I have got an opportunity to create a role for myself, to propose a role for myself, but I'm struggling to differentiate between what's good for me and what's good for the organisation. And even though I've been invited to do this as a way of retaining me, I'm really struggling to get in the mindset to think about what do I want rather than what does the organisation. It's got to fit what the organisation wants, but I'm struggling to get into the mindset of what do I want. So I'd be interested in wisdom about that.
Wow, that's such a great question, and also a great achievement. You should really kind of, you know, take a step back and think, right, if an organization wants me so bad, they are happy for me to kind of create my own job description, that's something to be super excited about. One of the things I would say is take a step back and think, what are your values, what are your strengths, and what is your kind of, ultimately, what do you want your purpose to be? So that might be a conversation that's going to be difficult with yourself to have over the next few days, but it's to take a step back and think, if I'm able to do anything that I basically can within this kind of area or this kind of, you know, box, what do I want to change? How do I want to drive impact? And once you can place yourself in a position or understand maybe these are the 3 or 5 things that you may want to do, you then take a step back and start reflecting on how you can acknowledge and embrace those in a university and an educational level. Yeah. So that could be as simple as, you know, and again, I don't know your job role and you definitely don't have to share, but it could be actually university level. We want to recruit more kind of, you know, diverse students from non-traditional backgrounds, just as an example.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, well, I want to help change the number of students that are coming in and the locations that they're coming in from. That's what I want to do. Because I want this university to be diverse, but most importantly, I want to help lead the inclusion angle. Great. So now that you know what you want to do, what you want to be known for, and what the university may be known for, it's taking a step back and thinking, what are the tasks or the steps that you can put in place to achieve that? Building out as if it was a roadmap. So thinking, right, in 5 years, what do you ultimately, I wouldn't even say 5 years, actually, that makes no sense because things change so fast. I would say in 2 years, what do you want maybe one of your accolades to be and one of your goals to be? Your personal goal. What do you want to be known for? What is your legacy? How are you going to move your movement and your purpose? And then take a step back and think, how am I going to deliver these tasks from a university level and from an educational level?
Yeah, that's good advice. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything to add? Definitely kind of, you know, unmute yourself, Acacia, if you have anything, words of wisdom to add to.
I think I just agree with what you were just saying there, Sonya. I definitely echo that, and that's a really good approach. Is knowing what you want to get from it and then making the step.
Yeah, And another way of kind of justifying that, because obviously then you have to go justify it, is think about your company. So, you know, kind of even if it's not a university in this scenario, but your company's CSR goals and their strategic goals and where they want to grow as a business in X, Y, Z years, and think this is how that's going to help you align with this goal. So you want to play it kind of threefold. One is what you want. Two is, okay, so if that's what I want, how is this university or this company going to help me build on those? So, you know, what are the smaller tasks? And three, how is that going to impact the wider remit? I have tons of messages every week from great senior leaders who want to be public speakers, who want to be able to share their information. And they're like, you know, we want to share it, but we don't know where to start. We don't know why we could start. And our company's not necessarily giving us the position to have a forum. And so what we do through the LMF network is we're always looking for great speakers and mentors to get involved. But what that means for your brand is it's enabling you to practice and for you to take a new approach. For a company perspective, you then go back to them and say, hey, well, one of your CSR goals is to educate. One of your CSR goals is to attract diverse talent. Another strategy of yours is to build your brand presence. This is what I'm doing through this forum. It doesn't take any time out of work and it doesn't take any time out of yourself. But what it means is I can prove the value of me going out and presenting and building our brand for the next 6-8 months. And then we can work on having opportunities co-created where I can maybe be a brand ambassador, or I can sit on more panels to do with the brand, or if workshops come through or conferences come through, you're giving me the opportunity to go and speak and to go and share. Because often what I've found through this experience is companies have the same person all the time doing the lip service and kind of going out and being the company face, which is awesome. But what about those who also want to do it? So think about where you want to be and what your legacy is, what values you would like to drive, how you can, in a short period of time, achieve that through other respectable milestones, even if that means being proactive yourself, and how that then meets the ultimate goal of the company. Remember, going back to a company, the company needs to be profitable, it needs to be productive, it needs to be efficient. Those are just basic KPIs of any company. So if you can direct your narrative in their language, remember they as a company are probably reds and blues, that's what's going to make it work for you and work for them. Perfect. So if you at this point are a sole trader, a self-employed, a freelancer, a lot of questions you may be having is, can you do this for free? We have no budget. Unless you are working with a not-for-profit or charity, or maybe someone in university, I think everyone has a budget. And so this is one of the difficult conversations I deal with all the time. I inquire, I see, okay, because of the current situation, how are you doing this time? What are your stresses? So I get straight to the person, I make it personal. I want to know, what are your stresses? What are your managerial stresses? You acknowledge, I understand, just to confirm, you currently don't have budget due to the situation. They would like me to support. I appreciate these times are stressful for you. Advocate, given the circumstances, I would like to support. I'll have to think about the offer, but I can definitely do something that can meet for the best of both worlds. And then you problem solve. You go in with your accolades, you go in what you can offer, you negotiate and say, you know what, normally this is my rate, but I'm happy to give you X rate. And on top of that, I can offer a 20-minute call or a workshop afterwards, or you can donate this sum to a charity of your choice. I believe that this will meet your need to deliver great content to the community and remember you for the effort that you've put in. And as a freelancer, I will not go out of pocket. These conversations over the last 2 months have helped me land gigs with Google, Barclays, Go Compare, just to name the least. And so the point being, it definitely works. And we can definitely have the conversation we want. We've already spoken about what holds us back. And most of the time, what holds us back is not knowing what to say and not having the prep and not having the confidence. Other types of difficult conversations are pay rises, family stuff, promotions, fees, expenses, markets, holidays, food shopping, even when you're bargaining. When you used to go to a Sunday market or a car boot sale, or even when you go to the markets on holiday, you're hustling. How are you going to bring that hustle mentality back into the workplace? Another way of negotiating, so let's negotiate. One is to actively listen. Actively listening is when you're literally of active listening. Your goal is to be in a psychological mindset of hearing what the other person is saying. This means, and this is really important, this means not interpreting it through your own lens, but literally hearing what the other person is saying. It's not thinking, this is what I've heard, this is what they've actually said. And then reflecting. Reflecting is when you tell the other person what you've heard and ensure that this is correct. This is a great technique used in couples counseling. Use the prompts like, what I heard you say is, or did I get that right? This allows the other person to clarify if needed and also demonstrates that you aren't assuming anything. It definitely works. I use this in different conversations with my family, with my friends, with my partner, with work. Even when I was negotiating this book deal, I had to go back for 3 weeks back and forth just to understand what they were saying was what I was hearing and just to get it down on paper. So here's another strategy, another way that you can go forward. In terms of doing the prep, what are your goals? So ultimately, what do you want to achieve? So going back to the question we just had, what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What is the strategy you're going to use? Are you going to do a build up? Are you going to do inquiry? Understand your signature. And this is where your personality, your comm styles comes in. If I know that I'm a red and a yellow and I know I'm able to story tell and I think of the bigger picture, I also know that some of my weaknesses are in not really knowing the details for the details and not really getting down to the nitty and gritty. So that's what I need to work on in my prep work. Build motivation. Unfortunately, a lot of it just comes down to us just being motivated and confident and knowing that we can go in. What are you willing to compromise on? Is it pay? Is it promotion? Is it time? Is it tasks? What is the mutual benefit? Where's the win-win? And then you just have to practice. When you think about masculine traits versus feminine traits are more empathetic, kind, gentle. Masculine traits are more logical, analytical, confident. And so normally it's not man versus woman in this conversation, it's masculine versus feminine. If you harness into your masculine traits, if you harness into the data, into the logic, and take out the emotion, you're going into these conversations not on a personal basis, but on a professional basis. Just last week, I've had to have a very difficult conversation. So earlier in the year, we were asked to media partner and host a event with a collaborative partner who at that point was charging for their tickets, and so we would get a share of the income. Due to COVID, unfortunately the event, which is an all-day event, has now tickets up for free. But at the same time, I've had a major client come through the same day who's willing to pay me basically my month's worth of rent and mortgage. So my difficult conversation was going back and saying, I'm super sorry, but I can't do this because of the situation we're in financially. But what was I willing to compromise on? Rather than doing 3, I said I'll do 1. I also took alternative hosts that can get involved. I had to understand my signature, and that was, storytelling, but I had to get straight to the point and be detailed. And what am I willing to compromise on? Okay, well, instead of me doing the hosting, I can help you find someone. Instead of you doing all the work to get the ticket sales, I can put it on my Eventbrite and make sure that we're able to support you. And so you came to a mutual compromise, and I had to practice. It was extremely difficult conversation. You feel like you're letting someone down. But when it's something which is life-changing, and especially being self-employed, versus something which you are doing for 9 hours for free. You have to think about what is best for you. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts before we move on? I really want this to be interactive as much as it can. If you've got a question, if you've got a thought, if you want to share, please do. Either that's in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself. Cool. Different forms of negotiation that you'll find. Distributive negotiation, also called distributive bargaining. This form of negotiation occurs when there's a limited amount of resources and each party assumes they have something to lose and the other party will gain something. Integrative, often referred to as win-win. Management. So this is the one that really is the one where we're most interested in, management and co-workers. Negotiating with management can be stressful in some cases. Employees feel comfortable sharing their wants and needs with someone in a more senior position. Co-worker. Negotiation skills allow co-workers to develop a plan that benefits the whole team. You may also negotiate when problem-solving conflict in the workplace. The most important thing in all of this is silence is golden. I used to fill in the silence and devalue myself. So I'd go in saying, okay, so my rate is £1,000. And then there'll be dead silence. And I'd get worried. I'm like, but you know what, for you, I can do it for 800. And then there'll be more silence. I'm like, oh, but I really want this gig and I can do it for 600. And before you know it, in a minute, you've gone from X amount to Y amount really quickly. This also happens when negotiating our pay, when we're negotiating salaries, when we're negotiating tasks in hand. Silence is golden. Give it a moment. Just put it out there and say, hey, well, this is what I want. Do you know what? I'm going to let you think over it. Come back to me in 24 hours. Come back to me in 4 hours. Drop me an email, let me know what you think, and we can pick this conversation back up. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have an example or a question.
Sonia, I have a question.
Yes, please.
I guess I just wondered, what this is a part of the job that we have to do quite often, being in recruitment with terms and things like that. And I just wondered, at what point do you think, okay, maybe I haven't got enough work on, so I will drop the price, or what you suggested originally? Obviously, most of the time you'd like to stick to what you said in the first place, but at what point do you think, okay, I'd like to help this company out, or this is a gig I really want, and how do you sort of negotiate that with yourself?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So there's a few ways of doing it. One, I always go in with, so what is your budget? I don't even kind of come in with my own budget. So I see what the company's budget is, because sometimes it's higher than what you would have charged. And often, like the conversation I had yesterday, it was much lower. But then you negotiate based on budget. So you say, okay, what is your budget? Oh, okay, cool. So normally I would charge around this much for this delivery. Do you think that you can kind of top it up? No. Okay, so for this much, this is the format that I'm happy to deliver. This is what the look and feel can be like. Normally, for a higher budget, I would put in a survey and a pre-call and a post-call, but unfortunately, I'm not able to offer that. Is that okay? Or the second, and I think is the most important, is understanding if there's also a long-term relationship at play. So if there's a long-term relationship, if there's something that you can do which is more than just once, then you're happy to drop both budgets and your rates, because you think there is something wider in the scope, and also you want to help where you can. So I'm currently doing a series with an office in a co-working space in Dublin. And they came with the lower budget. But I said, okay, I will take your lower budget if you give me 3 workshops over the next 6 months for that price. And that's something they could do. So that means I've got 3 gigs at a lower frame, but a longer time period. And what they were also happy to do is they were happy to promote me and present me in their magazine. So sometimes when you're negotiating, it's not just about money, it's also about media and marketing. There are opportunities that you will get which have lower budgets. So it's okay, can you send a video out of me to your clients? Can you promote me in the press? Can you write a press release? Can you give me a testimonial? Can you introduce me to 5 other people? Can you give me a reference? So it's not just money minded. And it goes back to one of the questions we had before. What are your values and what are your purpose? My values and my purpose, luckily, is not solely money. Mine is to help change the narrative of inclusion. It's to help everyone feel like they can be their best selves at work, in life. And so a lot of the things I don't do for free. I do with a mutual understanding that this is going to help you, it's going to help me, but there's going to be something long term as an approach. Does that make sense? Does that help?
Yeah, no, that was really good. Thank you.
No worries. And thank you for asking. So what are some of the things we can start doing today? Emails, online, over the phone. When it comes to emails, we can put our thoughts on paper. We can direct it in a way that it is written so that it's introduction, your perspective, my perspective, here's what I'm proposing, literally under those headings. What I would say from experience is don't send the email straight away, because sometimes that can get you into trouble and that's not where you want to be. I've had some really disastrous examples of where I have been really passionately hot, sent an email and it hasn't worked. At the same time, an email is a great way for you to give your accolades and for you to show your achievements. Online, and online meaning via meetings and via Zoom, having difficult conversations via a virtual kind of, screen is difficult in itself and it's tiring. Being online all the time is tiring. So here I would recommend take some breaks. Don't feel like you have to constantly be on. Be in a position where you've put in different meetings. Maybe the morning is where you have the initial conversation and you have a time period to think and you come back in the evening. So you're still having the hours meeting, but you're splitting it into 2 half an hours. Send an agenda. If you consider your personality types and the personality types around you, sometimes you need an agenda to know exactly what you're talking about and what's worth it. And then over the phone. So over the phone is a lot of the time when you do a lot of mouth blabbing because there's silence and you don't know what to say. Stay silent. Ask them if they'd like a callback. Be very honest in your approach. And yes, most definitely put yourself first. Now that we've had a bit of time to think, is there anything else that you would recommend? For those who are in the chat and those who can maybe unmute yourselves, is there anything that you think we should start doing today that I haven't mentioned and that you've kind of thought, you know what, this is something I'm going to start, this is something we can do, this is something that's going to change? If you can, put it in the chat, feel free. If you want to unmute yourself, feel free. I think it is a little bit of a frustration that some of you can't put it in the chat because I know coming online is quite a difficult scenario. That's completely fine as well. So as we start wrapping up and coming to the end, I want to start bringing in some other key points. These are around mindfulness. So your intention, count to 3 before replying, reread your email after 15 minutes before sending, ask a mentor, friend or sponsor to practice with you, and don't be afraid to ask for support. Unfortunately, some of the time what happens is when we are having a difficult conversation, we panic and it brings up anxiety and we're unsure as to what to say or why to say something and how to go forward. In these scenarios, it very much is about confirming our intention, counting to 3, taking a deep breath, and just knowing that everything's going to be okay and you can do this. I call this the successes. So in your own time, I want you to go back and think, right, what are all the skills and strengths that I have, and write them down really kind of, or brainstorm on a piece of paper or a note on your iPhone, whichever one. For each skill or strength, write down a success story. And for each success story, write down a so what. Did you create a result, an impact? Where did it drive change? This is key and core because these are examples, definite examples that you can take back into these different conversations. Say, hey, well, I engaged X percentage. I increased outreach by Y percentage, I was able to upskill Z amount of people. And it made a difference. And then you start thinking about your strategy, which is the way you're going to negotiate, which is the way you're going to have a difficult conversation. You focus on your story, and then you just have to go and speak. You have to find the confidence and you have to just go for it. Some of us will feel like a fraud. We'll feel like we have imposter syndrome. Like you made it up along the way, like you're not qualified, like you're not senior enough. You've convinced yourself you're not good enough, you're not knowledgeable enough, you're not capable enough. 62% of adults feel like this, especially at work. 86% of millennials in the last 12 months, and 38% is caused by own self-doubt, meaning you freak yourself out even before you get there. Imposter syndrome, especially in women, is such a big phenomenon. But I can tell you from experience that once upon a time I used to feel like an imposter, and in most scenarios now I don't, because I go in aligning opportunities with my strengths, knowing that I'm able to achieve the goals that need to be achieved, and being in a place where we are able to have difficult conversations, knowing who we are and what we can be. So for imposter syndrome, you talk it out. You identify your strengths and you stick to them in your opportunities. Often in the workplace, we're told more about our weaknesses than we are about our strengths. Identify what your strengths are and focus on building them and them and them so that you can be deemed as an expert. When I was working in tech, I was often told by my managers that I'm not going to be able to progress because I'm not technical enough. And yet I was able to go and speak to complete strangers in a room and win them over because my communication skills were there. Unfortunately, there was a moment where I actually started learning how to be a coder because I thought that was going to impact my future. And it just wasn't for me. There are far better coders than I am. Every time I learned a line of code, I wasn't focusing on my strengths, but someone whose strength was coding was just upskilling and upskilling and upskilling and becoming the expert that I couldn't become. And so focus on your strengths and align your opportunities that way. Talk it out. Talk it out with examples. Ask your mentors, your sponsors, your coaches. Share successes. If you see my LinkedIn or if you see my Instagram, I share successes online. My Instagram is literally a portfolio of successes and failures, because I talk about failures more than I do about successes, but failures help you to learn. And constantly, consciously stop negative thoughts. You have to be your biggest cheerleader. If you're not your biggest cheerleader, then no one else can cheerlead on your behalf. So managing difficult conversations 101. Difficult conversations, understand the purpose, don't be led by emotion, and practice. Mindfulness and managing emotion, don't think of yourself as less, take a breath and slow down. Personality and communication style, consider their style of communication, provide clear examples and establish connection and confidence. Talk it out, share successes, and consciously stop negative thoughts. So before we come to an end, what I want you all to do is I want you to think about your goals for the rest of 2020. We have less than 90 days, apparently, until the year ends, and I don't even know where this year began and what's happened. But think, what goals do you want to achieve? What difficult conversations do you want to have professionally and personally? Write them down using the SMART format, so a specific goal, a measurable goal, an attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Transform your I can'ts to I cans and use the power of your inner language. It's absolutely amazing. If you walk in thinking, I can do something, if you hold yourself accountable, if you stay silent, if you think I can and transform that I can't into I can, I should, I'm going to, is honestly going to change the way you think, the way you believe, the way that you converse, and the conversations that you're having. So that comes to the end of my spoken workshop. I always want to leave some time at the end to have questions and thoughts and chat. I appreciate it is not easy looking at a screen for an hour, especially when we are all suffering from Zoom or Microsoft Teams fatigue and burnout. So I encourage us all to start the conversation, to jump back on the chat. How do you feel? How are you thinking? Do you have any questions?
Comments here, Sonia, in the chat. So,
oh, I actually can't see the chat.
Oh,
okay.
you've picked it down, haven't you?
Oh, okay. So that.
So I'll read them out for you, and then Vicky, I don't know if you wanted to elaborate, and then Karen, because I know you both talked in the chat. So Vicky has put, I think I'll dedicate more time to the preparation ahead of the conversation to make me more comfortable. As you say, it's hard to have these conversations virtually. Vicky, I don't know if you wanted to add to that.
Yeah, so I think, well, me personally, over the last couple of months, I've had some challenging conversations with my team and in the organisation I work for, looking at changing the structure, being more effective. And it's hard, I suppose, to take the emotion out of those conversations. And I think where I've approached it, similar to what Karen's put, I need to be a bit more strategic with my approach to the conversations, thinking about who I'm having the conversations with and adapting my message or my influencing point to how they're going to want to receive it, rather than going in with what I kind of want to say, if that makes sense. And yeah, just being a bit more flexible in my approach to people, how people want to receive it, really.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Sorry, so I honestly thought that my chat had just paused. I didn't realize that I'd been kicked out to the extent that I couldn't see anything. So, you know, that's why I kind of like was referring to the chat, not knowing that anything's actually happening. But thank you so much for sharing that. And, you know, honestly, it takes time and it takes practice, and absolutely nobody is perfect. Everyone is having a difficult conversation. We just think because maybe they're more senior or more expert led that they don't feel it as much, but everyone feels it. And again, if you need advice and you need support, drop me a line. I'd be more than happy, you know, to practice with you if you want. Just to jump on a phone call and for 10 minutes and say, this is what I'm thinking of saying. What do you think? How does it come out? And I love the point that you've made about understanding who they are, and really being able to direct the conversation based on them and their needs, which I think is so key and so core. When you are the one having the conversation, you're trying to basically persuade the other person to listen. Were there any other comments or any other thoughts?
So the only two, I think, since that you probably didn't see was from Karen also. So Karen, you basically agreed with what Vicky was saying, and you said that you prepare more for difficult conversations with your team members, but don't when you have difficult conversations with your boss. He's a red and you are a yellow and green. So you think that you need to see what position and kind of what do you want to say better and what outcome that you like to get from it. I don't know if you wanted to add to that, Karen.
I mean, in terms of that, my boss has actually changed, and the dynamic is quite different. So my previous boss was more of a sort of a blue green, but my new boss is definitely more of a red, and I think it's taken quite a while for me to sort of try and understand that the language has to be a bit different, and it is a lot harder if you're doing it virtually. So the difficult conversations, I think, are harder when you're doing it on Teams. Even if you've got a sort of a video, you can see people. It's much easier if you have those conversations face to face. So some of those difficult conversations, I've tried to sort of be in the office when he's been in the office to have those conversations, because I know that they go better that way.
Another tip or trick is write down the key points that you want to get across in a notepad. And it doesn't have to be like a piece of paper, but it can literally be like a Google Docs or a Microsoft Word, and share your screen. So, sorry, not share as in share it with the other person, but split your screen. So on one half of the screen, so you put like Windows Shift right, you have your virtual conversation, and on the other half, you have your notes ready. So that you're not looking down when you're looking, you're always looking at the screen, but you can kind of flick your eyes between, here's the points I wanted to get across. Have I got it across? What was the percentage? What was the point? What was the data? And have the conversation. And the second to note on that is, one, you can send an agenda out beforehand with kind of clear points, or two, And you can definitely do a wrap-up summary to be like, look, here's what we've spoken about. Here's what you have wanted. Here's what I've proposed. Here's, 3 examples of where I've done this. It's just so that here we kind of have this on record, and I look forward to your reply. So think about, yes, we are online and we're virtual, but think about how we can use that to our advantage and how we can kind of create these little cheat sheets, let's say, when we are presenting, especially those online.
It's quite interesting with that, because that's sort of my approach when I'm talking to clients. I've been doing that quite a lot, but for the internal conversations, I haven't been. So those are really good points. So something to use internally as well as sort of externally, I guess. So that's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's another one. So Marion, thank you for your feedback. So this is a really good approach that just requires calm thinking without emotion, as you say. Not easy if things have gotten emotional, but definitely worth working, as this is really constructive.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I mean, great feedback. And again, it comes from experience. And one of the things that we didn't mention and that I'd love to do is, everyone here is on this call because they, yes, want to get involved in the Women in Tech with Crimson, but also because it's about managing difficult conversations. So one thing I'd encourage you all to do before we drop off today is to share your socials, share your LinkedIns, share your job titles, in the sense of connect with each other, so that when you are having a difficult conversation, use the people in this chat potentially as accountability buddies. Connect with one another and say, hey, well, we were in this chat together and this is what we were speaking about. Do you mind if we just jump on a call for 10 minutes and discuss it? Or use, the women at Crimson, they're amazing. So don't be afraid to also use the forums that you're in as potential friends or community members or connections that you can get involved with and say, hey, well, we were in this call. I've got a difficult conversation. Do you mind if we jump on a call for 10 minutes? I'll tell you how I think I'm going to do it. You tell me what your feedback is, because you're both then practicing a conversation that you may have not had before.
That's a really good suggestion, and I do think that would definitely help. And I think just having someone outside of your organisation to be able to openly talk to and think, am I going crazy here? Probably you're more than likely not, but just being able to talk through your ideas, talk through what your conversation you're going to have and your actions, and then you can also touch base after. So that's a really good shout if everyone can share your name and LinkedIn in the chat window. Just having a look for any other comments. So Donna, thank you. So this has been a breath of fresh air. Love the 101 slide. Lily, Teams has been playing up for me, but really enjoy the session and discussion. Yeah, Teams wasn't on our side this morning, was it?
No.
It was testing how we can handle difficult conversations, that's for sure, via Teams. Thank you for sharing your LinkedIn's also.
At the same time, remember, if you want any other coaching or guiding, feel free to drop me a line. It's something I do all the time. I have clients on this, I have coaching calls on this, but again, the women at Crimson do as well, and that's why we're here to help. It's all about being in a position where we can support one another to thrive and to progress, so that we can change the stats and we can change the numbers, but we can create a sense of community. This is not about competition, and it's not about who gets the promotion, quicker than someone else. It's about making sure that everyone in this chat gets what they want and what they deserve, and we can support one another to get there. I'll also put my Calendly link. If you want to put some time in with me, feel free. But at the same time, especially the lady who spoke about your CV, that's why the ladies are here. Send your CV through and have a chat and see, is that how it should be? Is that what it needs to be? What can we change? What can we make better? How can we have this conversation so that we feel more comfortable?
Naomi, are you okay to share your email as well? So if you do want to talk around your CV or your CV profile, Naomi, who introduced herself at the start, she's in our recruitment team and she'll be able to help you with that. And we also run CIO candidate workshops, so they aren't just for CIOs. You can be head of, you can be director level, we definitely are aiming at the senior level, just so it's peer-to-peer, but it's all around you being able to get a new role, being able to position yourself. CV, we get a lot of questions on cover letters, how important they are, LinkedIn, where to find roles, and we just help point you in the right direction, but also be able to help you get a new role as well.
Yeah, and if you're looking to upskill yourselves, you're looking to become a mentor, drop me a line. We're opening up our 2021 mentor and mentorship program. It's over 6 months. We already have 200 people signed up. You know, maybe one of the ways of having difficult conversations is to have it with someone who is younger, older, diverse to yourself. But definitely, I think one thing we're really bad at doing, especially as those who identify as women, is picking up when someone is trying to help us, and it's kind of saying yes to the offer. But you know, the ladies have kind of offered services, these breakfasts, the CIO sessions they have, the CV building, the CV kind of auditing, the conversations we're having. I've offered it. Don't be afraid to say yes and to get involved with them, because that's what we're here for, and we're here to help you, and most importantly, help you achieve what you deserve to achieve. So don't feel like it's a burden, or you don't want to, you know, kind of invest too much. You don't want to waste anyone's time. It's not about that. It's about really, if someone's letting you a hand, you know, you say, do you know what? You made an offer. Let me say yes to that offer and see how I can move forward. So I don't know if there's any other thoughts or comments going.
I think that's it from me. Thank you, Sonya. That was brilliant and really appreciated. And thank you, ladies, for joining us this morning. We will be running another Women in Tech breakfast in the coming months, so we will send you an invite for that and keep an eye out on socials. And thank you again. I hope you have a brilliant day. And it's quite a nice way to start the day, I think. I'll enjoy doing the morning sessions.
So much. Yeah, thank you everyone for attending and showing up and just being your best selves. And at the same time, if you feel like, okay, I had a question, I didn't really know if I could ask it, I wasn't ready, or on reflection, drop it to Keisha, we can kind of follow up, and we can support you in any and every way possible.
And we'll be sending you out an email with the 101 information that Sonya's put together with our information too, and a little feedback form. So do have a look out for that if you can.
Perfect. Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Sonya.
5 minutes back in your day. That's great.
Have a great day. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.